I didn't just lose my house, my business, and my entire life savings to save the woman I loved. I sacrificed everything to save my wife from death, and when she was finally, miraculously, cured, she looked me straight in the eye and laughed. She told me I was weak and replaceable, then filed for divorce, taking my children and every last piece of my dignity. Now, if you have ever been absolutely gutted by the person you loved most, if you know what it feels like to have your unconditional love used as a weapon against you, I need you to stop right now. Take 3 seconds, hit the subscribe button, and join the Truth Architects. Because this channel is where we stop lying to ourselves, start talking about the reality of family betrayal, and finally, find the strength to rebuild. I'm giving you the raw, unfiltered truth. And in return, I need your voice. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what is the deepest betrayal you've ever faced? Let's get real. That knock came at 1:57 a.m. I know the exact time because I was sitting in the dark of this tiny studio apartment 4C, staring at the clock, letting the failure wash over me. The place smelled like cheap cleaning chemicals and the kind of existential dread you only find at the bottom of the emotional barrel. I hadn't showered properly in days. I was wearing the same stained hoodie I'd worn when I lost the custody battle for my twin girls, Skylar and Aubrey, and my son, Caleb. Just an hour earlier, an email had pinged, the final divorce decree from Serafina's shark lawyer. Attached was a photo. It wasn't just a photo of her and Marcus Sterling. It was them on a yacht, laughing. Serafina's hand draped possessively over Marcus's shoulder, a massive diamond ring flashing. That ring probably cost more than the $4,000 I cleared selling my grandfather's antique tool chest. The last thing I had to sacrifice. I felt a nausea so deep it tasted metallic. I realized then that my love, my loyalty, and my willingness to sacrifice everything to save my wife from death had simply been a down payment on her new, lavish life with him. I was trying to wedge my old wedding band, the simple platinum band Serafina said she hated because it wasn't blingy enough, into the broken window frame to stop the relentless December draft. It was the only thing I had left that could keep the cold out. That's when I heard the knocking. It wasn't the tentative, quiet rap of a neighbor. It was a rhythmic, aggressive beat, like someone demanding immediate payment. I didn't grab the phone to call 911. Honestly, I didn't care. What did I have left to lose? I pulled the door open, ready to face the music, whether it was the landlord or just the crushing weight of reality finally arriving in a physical form. It wasn't Theodore Ashford, the private investigator I didn't know yet. It was my brother, Elijah. My older brother, the golden child. Elijah stood there, impeccably dressed in a tailored wool coat that looked like it cost 3 months of my current unemployment benefits. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't even look at the pathetic state of the apartment. His eyes were cold, calculating, and fixed only on the object of his demand. "Where is it, Ash?" he asked, his voice smooth and utterly devoid of compassion. "Where is what?" "Elijah," I muttered, feeling the familiar, burning resentment bubble up. He didn't bother to soften the blow. "The check, Ashton. The $50,000. That life insurance money Mom left us. Dad signed it over to you for Serafina's treatments. Remember? Well, guess what? The treatments worked. She's perfectly healthy. And now she's with a real man who knows how to handle money. You didn't use that money to save her life. You used it to fund a delusion." He paused, letting the silence magnify the cruelty. "Now I need my cutback. I have an investment opportunity, and I'm not letting a weak failure like you hold up my future." That hit me harder than the divorce papers. Not only had Serafina mocked my sacrifice, but my own brother was standing in my doorway at 2 a.m., calling me a failure and demanding the return of money that I thought I'd spent saving a human life. The irony was a physical blow to my chest. I stared at the man who was supposed to be my family, the man who had everything, the praise, the effortless career, the perfect life, All because Dad always preferred his practicality over my flights of fancy. And here he was, twisting the knife Serafina had left. I closed my eyes for a moment, gripping the doorknob until my knuckles turned white. I thought I had hit rock bottom when Serafina walked out. I was wrong. Rock bottom was realizing the whole world, including the people I shared blood with, saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM to be drained and discarded. "Elijah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with disbelief. "The money is gone. I sacrificed everything to save my wife from death. It went to the doctors, or at least, the person pretending to be the doctor." Elijah just sighed, shaking his head with a condescending pity that made me want to hit him. Typical. Ash. Always the dreamer. Always broke. I knew Dad shouldn't have given you access to that fund. "I'll be back. You owe me." He didn't close the door gently. He didn't even say goodbye. He just pivoted and walked away, disappearing into the cold night, leaving me alone with the sickening realization. I didn't know then that this betrayal was just the prelude to a far deeper cruelty. Elijah's footsteps faded down the hall, but the chill he left behind stayed, colder than the December draft. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the familiarity of it, that entitled, dismissive tone, the way he looked right through me. That was the story of my entire life. To understand why Serafina and Elijah's cruelty felt like a death blow, you need to understand where I came from. You need to meet Robert Hayes, my father, and the complicated landscape of our family. My dad, Robert, was a brilliant man, a retired constitutional law professor from a good university. He was all about logic, structure, and tradition. He designed his life like a fortress, every boundary clearly defined, every emotion filed away neatly. He valued practicality and predictable success above everything else. Then there were the two sons. Elijah was the golden child. He was 3 years older, charming, athletic, and from Dad's perspective, stable. He went into finance, wore the expensive suits, and talked about quarterly reports. That was Dad's version of success, the safe, defensible territory. Elijah was the main character in the Hayes family narrative. I was Ashton, or Ash, the younger brother, the dreamer, the one who saw beauty in dirt and felt more comfortable with a pruning shear than a spreadsheet. I was passionate about architecture and design, seeing a soul in every landscape. Dad called my love for design a flight of fancy and financially irresponsible. My talents were always dismissed as hobbies, never a serious profession. I remember one defining moment, maybe 10 years old. I spent an entire summer meticulously designing and building a small rock garden and waterfall for Mom in our backyard. It was complex, beautiful, and it was mine. When I showed Dad, he just nodded and said, "It's decorative. Ash, now, look at this." He pointed to the perfect, geometric fence Elijah had helped him build. That's structure. That's work. He never once praised the creativity or the effort. He just reaffirmed that what I valued was frivolous. That criticism became the background noise of my life. You are good, but you are not enough. When I turned 18, I got accepted into Yale for their prestigious architecture program. It was the only time I ever saw a spark of genuine pride in my mother's eyes. But that same month, Elijah, who was already failing out of his business major at a local college, got himself into serious debt after a failed crypto investment. Dad was furious, but not at Elijah. He was stressed. He sat me down and said, "Ash, Yale is $70,000 a year. Elijah needs that money now to save his future. You can go to a state school. It's practical. Elijah needs this second chance more." It was a quiet command, not a discussion. I felt the familiar weight of being the shadow. I ripped up the Yale acceptance letter that night, the paper tearing like my spirit. I went to a local university and started working full-time, sacrificing my ambition to keep Elijah afloat. And for what? for him to stand in my pathetic apartment doorway decades later, demanding change. When I finally launched Hayes Landscapes and Design, I built it on sheer grit, transforming that hobby into an award-winning reality. The firm wasn't just a business, it was my defiant answer to Dad's doubt. I was finally succeeding on my own terms. That's when Serafina walked into my life. She was an art curator. She saw the soul in my designs. She would run her hands over my rough sketchbooks and say, "Ash, you are a genius. You create beauty where others see only dirt." Serafina wasn't like my family. She wasn't cold logic. She was all passion, fire, and affirmation. She was the one person who gave me the validation I had spent my whole life begging my father and brother for. She became my world, the centerpiece of my garden. Looking back, I was so hungry for that affirmation. I ignored the cracks. I ignored the fact that she was constantly trying to upgrade our social standing, always pushing me toward wealthier clients, always wanting more. I saw her ambition as drive. My father saw it as a yellow flag. He never liked her. He was always formal, distant, and critical. I thought he was just being the typical, judgmental academic. I thought he was wrong. I remember his words when I asked him to be my best man. He simply said, "Ashton, you are rushing into a life you haven't fully architected. Be careful of beautiful foundations built on shifting sand." I dismissed it as another one of his cold, critical warnings. Now, sitting here in the aftermath, I realize he wasn't criticizing me. He was criticizing the weakness in my own judgment, the blind spot I had for the only person who seemed to truly love me. My marriage to Serafina was built on my talent and my deep, desperate need to be truly seen. My entire adult life was a series of sacrifices, first for my brother's stability, and then for my wife's affection. I was an architect who could build the most beautiful landscapes for others, but I couldn't recognize the toxic soil in my own home, and that fundamental flaw, that lifelong yearning for approval, is exactly what Serafina exploited when she decided I was no longer useful. If you've ever felt like your own family has been your biggest hurdle, or that you constantly have to prove your worth, you know the isolation I felt. Have you ever been the less favored child? Comment the shadow below. Let me know I'm not the only one who had to fight his way out of the narrative someone else wrote for him. The worst part is, the sacrifices I made for Elijah seemed small compared to what Serafina would soon demand. And this time, it wasn't just my career I'd be tearing down. It was my entire existence. The humiliation from Elijah faded into a dull ache, replaced by the crushing memory of what came next. The years I spent frantically trying to prove I was worthy, only to have the ground crumble beneath my feet. When Serafina and I reached the peak of our success, it felt like I'd finally won the argument against my father and Elijah. Hayes Landscapes and Design wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We were designing custom outdoor spaces for clients who paid more for a patio than I made in my first 5 years combined. Serafina was busy curating art for those same wealthy clients, and we were the ultimate power couple, the artist and the curator. We bought a beautiful ranch house in the foothills, a place I designed myself, a testament to my own value. But success has a way of attracting vultures. Serafina started changing subtly. She began pushing me away from the actual work. The dirt, the heavy lifting, the early mornings. She'd say things like, "Ash, you're an artist now, not a laborer. Let the crew handle the grunt work. You need to focus on the vision and the networking." She started spending more time at gallery openings and charity events, often bringing along her new financial consultant, Marcus Sterling. Marcus was everything I wasn't. Smooth, sterile, and always talking about asset protection and offshore trusts. I instantly disliked him. I complained to Serafina. "He gives me the creeps. Rena, why is he always around?" She'd just shrug and give me that look, the one that said I was being provincial and jealous. "He's helping me navigate the high net worth world. Ash, Our wealth is reaching a point where we need professional guidance, not just your gut feelings. That tension was simmering, but nothing prepared me for the actual diagnosis. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Serafina called me, crying, from the specialist's office. Rare, aggressive renal failure. Her kidneys were shutting down fast. She needed intensive, experimental treatments immediately, followed by a highly specialized, immediate organ transplant preparation. The doctors painted a terrifying picture. Without immediate, specialized care, she might not make it 6 months. The world stopped spinning. All those years of feeling like the shadow child, of constantly proving my worth, vanished. Only one thing mattered: the promise I made to her. I threw myself into saving her with the same focus I used to design a complex retaining wall or a multi-tiered fountain. I was a man of action, a builder. I could fix this. But the numbers were staggering. Our insurance was good, but not that good. The experimental treatment was a brutal $180,000 up front. That's when the self-destruction began. I started by liquidating the firm. Not just equipment. I sold Hayes Landscapes and Design to a rival company that had been circling us for years. The final handshake felt like a knife being twisted in my chest. That company was my defiant independence, my personal victory against my father's skepticism. And just like that, it was gone. The rival, a guy named Kent, shook my hand and said, "Tough break, Hayes, but family first, right?" He couldn't have known how deeply those words cut. Next was the soul-crushing part. The sketchbooks. These weren't just notebooks. They were my architectural journals. Decades of original, award-winning landscape blueprints. They were the physical manifestation of my genius. The reason Serafina married me. I sold them to an art dealer. I remember standing in the cold garage, pulling out the last book. The one with the design for our own backyard. The one with the hidden reading nook for Skylar and Aubrey. I felt like I was bleeding. I was selling my very identity to keep her alive. Serafina watched me with an odd detachment. She was losing weight rapidly, always looking pale and exhausted, a testament to the severity of the disease. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch a flash of something in her eyes, a kind of calculating patience that unnerved me. She wasn't panicking about the money. She seemed satisfied that I was emptying the accounts. "We need to move. Ash," she insisted one night, her voice weak but firm. "The house needs to be sold immediately. The capital gains alone will cover the next phase." We moved into a cramped, sterile apartment downtown. The money, over $400,000 from the house sale and the business liquidation, went straight into the account designated for the specialist's protocols. During this time, the tension with my kids was constant. Skylar and Aubrey, the twins, were only 10, confused and scared. Caleb, the 16-year-old, was quieter than usual. He saw the change in Serafina. I was focused entirely on the beautiful, fragile creature I was trying to save. I ignored the red flags, the mysterious wire transfers, Serafina's insistence that I never attend appointments, and her increasing coldness toward me. I convinced myself that cancer or renal failure made people distant. I was sacrificing my life's blood, but I didn't know the knife was being held by the one I was trying to save. I was running myself into the ground, completely exhausted, completely broke, and completely alone. The worst of it was the profound sense of isolation. I had given up my career, my home, and my savings. I was a professional martyr. I thought that kind of sacrifice would earn me respect, if not from my father, then certainly from my wife. Instead, it was simply earning her contempt. But then, everything collapsed. Not slowly, but all at once, in a single, brutal day. I was running on fumes and bad coffee, living in that tiny apartment, trying to reconcile the fact that my entire life had been detonated. But at least the one person who mattered was alive. Serafina was supposedly recovering brilliantly. The miracle cure had worked. She looked fantastic. Actually, better than she had in years. The terrifying thinness was gone, replaced by a sleek, sharp energy. She started wearing her expensive jewelry again, the stuff she'd packed away during the treatments. She was radiant, energized, and utterly distant. I was waiting for the moment we would start rebuilding. I was waiting for her to look at me, truly look at me, and say, "We did it. Ash, thank you." That moment never came. Instead, the final, most brutal blow was delivered, not in a sterile court document, but at a party, a triumphant celebration of her new life, hosted in the graveyard of my old one. 2 months after the divorce papers were filed, Serafina called me. Her voice was sweet, almost sickeningly so. "Ash, darling, you have to come to the party this weekend. It's a housewarming, and the kids really want you there. It's important for the twins." I hesitated. "A housewarming? Where are you moving? Serafina?" She giggled, a high, brittle sound. "Oh, you'll see. It's lovely. Black tie optional. Honey, don't be late." I should have known. I should have slammed the phone down and walked away. But she used the kids, and that was the one weak spot she always knew how to exploit. I dug my only decent suit, the one I'd worn to Caleb's middle school graduation, out of storage. I drove my beat-up truck toward the address. As I rounded the corner, my gut clenched into a knot so tight I could barely breathe. The house was familiar, horribly so. It was our ranch house. The one I designed. The one I built. The one I landscaped with my own hands. The one I sold to save her life. The new owners had barely touched the exterior, but the driveway was jammed with luxury cars. Porsches, Teslas, Range Rovers. The front door was open, spilling out music, laughter, and light. I felt like a ghost crashing my own funeral. I walked up the pathway I had meticulously laid with natural stone, stepped over the threshold I had sealed myself, and entered the house. The interior, which I had purposefully left bright and airy, was now dominated by Serafina's expensive cold art installations. She was standing in the living room, our living room, looking spectacular in a sapphire gown, holding a glass of champagne. She saw me and gave me a condescending little wave. Then she turned to the microphone. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," Serafina beamed, looking every inch the successful, refined woman. "Tonight isn't just a housewarming. It's a celebration of new beginnings and real stability." She then gestured to the man beside her, Marcus Sterling, looking even smugger than he did in court, in a bespoke tuxedo. "Many of you know I went through a terrifying health crisis," she continued, her voice dripping with fake humility. "And I was fortunate to have Ash here, who, well, he tried. He sacrificed all our assets trying to save me." She paused, taking a slow sip of champagne, making every wealthy guest lean in. Then came the words that didn't just hurt. They atomized my soul. But when you're facing life and death, you learn what real strength looks like. You learn that a man's value isn't in his ability to make pretty drawings in the dirt. It's in his ability to secure and grow assets, to be practical, to be stable. She slipped her hand into Marcus's. "That's why I want to introduce my new fiancé, Marcus Sterling. Marcus not only saved my financial future, he showed me what a real man looks like. Someone who knows how to keep an empire, not tear it down. He bought this house for us. He's the foundation my family needs." The room erupted in polite applause. People glanced at me. The poor, pathetic former husband, the weak failure who threw away $2 million on a delusion. I felt the blood rush from my head. I was standing in the very space I poured my love into, and I was being publicly flayed by the person I nearly died trying to save. My son, Caleb, was watching from the edge of the dining room. He was 16, and he saw everything. He caught my eye, and in his face, I didn't see contempt. I saw shame, but not for me. He looked ashamed for Serafina. He quickly turned and walked away, unable to meet my gaze. That was my breaking point. Not the loss of the money, not the divorce, but the public execution of my character in front of my friends and children. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to destroy the very core of who I was. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and walked out. I didn't bother grabbing the half-eaten shrimp toast. I drove off, away from the party lights and the mocking laughter. The only thought in my head was a white-hot singular emotion. She lied. She didn't just leave me. She planned my destruction. I was exhausted, shattered, and in a state of shock. The road was slick with freezing rain, the kind of winter storm that hits hard and fast in the foothills. The streetlights blurred through my tears, which I wiped away with the back of my hand. I wasn't just crying. I was weeping, sobbing the deep, gasping cries of a man who realized he had given his life for a monster. I sped up, wanting only to outrun the sound of her laughter. I wasn't paying attention to the patch of black ice. The truck fishtailed violently. I fought the wheel, but my reaction time was non-existent. The last thing I heard before the sickening crunch of metal and shattering glass was the sound of my own raw scream. I thought everything ended there, in the cold, wet darkness, miles from the house that was once my home. I thought my life, the failure, the weak man, the shadow was finally over. But then, something unexpected happened. The world dissolved into a blinding flash of white and then a deep, echoing silence. When consciousness dragged me back, it wasn't to the sound of sirens, but to the smell of disinfectant and the dull, persistent throbbing in my leg. I was alive. Barely. I woke up in a small, sterile room in the County General Hospital. My leg was in traction. My ribs felt like shattered glass, and my left arm was a roadmap of bruises from fighting the steering wheel. The doctor said I was lucky. A broken femur, cracked ribs, and severe exhaustion. The exhaustion, he noted, was almost as dangerous as the crash itself. I was lying there, alone, staring at the ceiling tiles, waiting for someone to rush in. Serafina, my kids, Elijah, Dad. No one came. I spent the next 48 hours in a fog of pain meds and confusion. I called Serafina from the hospital phone. Ash? Seriously? You crashed your truck? Her voice was irritation, not concern. I'm busy planning the charity gala with Marcus. This is incredibly inconvenient. Just sign the insurance forms, and I'll send someone to pick up your belongings from that cheap apartment. Serafina, I almost died. I'm in the hospital. I need help with the bills. She laughed, the same sharp, cruel sound from the party. Help? Ash, you don't have any assets left. You remember the custody agreement? You're not my responsibility anymore. Get a public defender for your traffic charges. I can't be associated with this kind of instability. She hung up, just like that. The phone receiver felt heavy and cold in my hand. That was it. The final abandonment. I was physically broken, and the only person I thought I had saved had thrown me away like damaged merchandise. I called Elijah next. He answered with a sigh. Ash, listen, I told you. The money is gone. I'm not bailing you out of this wreck. Dad's gone radio silent, and frankly, I have a reputation to maintain. You're becoming a liability. He quickly changed the subject back to himself. Look, focus on getting better so you can start working and pay me back. That's the only way this works. He hung up too. My own family, the people I had sacrificed my Yale education and my mother's legacy for, left me to rot in a hospital bed. I was utterly, profoundly isolated. But sometimes, when the darkness is the deepest, a tiny flicker of light appears from the most unexpected place. There was a nurse named Chloe. She was young, maybe early 30s, sharp, and wore her compassion on her sleeve. She was the one who changed my bandages, brought me extra pillows, and, crucially, listened to me ramble in my drug-induced despair about the divorce, the ranch house, and Serafina's impossible recovery. One night, she found me awake, staring blankly. "You know, Ash," she said gently, pulling up a chair. "I looked at your chart. Feasibility of your injuries, recovery time. It's all manageable. What's crushing you isn't the broken leg, it's the broken spirit." I choked out the story, the full, humiliating version, including Serafina's sudden, miraculous recovery from aggressive renal failure, the shady specialist, and the public shaming by Marcus Sterling. Chloe didn't look doubtful. She looked angry. "Listen to me, Ash. I've worked this floor for 10 years. Renal failure, especially aggressive, experimental treatment protocols. That leaves scars. You don't bounce back that fast. You don't look like a porcelain doll weeks after a successful transplant prep. Something is wrong with that picture." She was the first person outside of Caleb to voice my hidden fear. The next day, she came in with a business card. It wasn't a doctor or a lawyer. It was for a private investigator, Theodore Ashford. "I know this man," Chloe whispered, leaning close. "He's actually looking into a massive insurance fraud ring linked to a local financial consultant, a guy named Marcus Sterling. He specializes in fraud cases, not domestic disputes. He doesn't take cases lightly. But I told him your story. I told him about the miracle cure, the Cayman Islands money talk you heard, and the total abandonment." A flicker of cold, rational hope ignited in my chest. It wasn't about getting the money back. It was about the truth. It was about proving I wasn't the weak failure she claimed I was. It was about cleaning the stain of her lie off my soul. I called Theodore Ashford immediately. The conversation was brief and sterile. He listened patiently to my rambling, but one detail made him pause. "The specialist your wife used, Dr. Chen, was she the one who pushed the aggressive experimental protocols that cost $180,000? "Yes, that's right, Mr. Hayes. Dr. Chen lost her license 3 years ago for Medicare fraud. She works exclusively for Marcus Sterling's private wellness fund. She specializes in creating realistic medical distress using powerful diuretics and calculated starvation to fake the symptoms of chronic organ failure." The revelation was a stunning, sickening blow. It wasn't just Serafina. It was a conspiracy. The pain in my leg vanished, replaced by the white-hot, singular focus of righteous fury. She didn't just abandon me. She engineered my near-death crash. The entire ordeal, the suffering, the tears, the exhaustion that led to the crash, was built on a lie. Theodore told me not to move, not to tell anyone, and most importantly, not to call Serafina or Elijah. "They are watching. Ash. They think you are broken and defeated. We need them to keep thinking that we need to turn this crisis into a tactical advantage." I hung up, staring at the phone. My body was broken. My family had rejected me. But for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't just Ash the Shadow, Ash the failure, or Ash the victim. I was Ash Hayes, the target, and a target can fight back. I was lying there, alone, broken and bankrupt. But I felt a strange sense of empowerment. My physical crisis had led to the revelation of a massive crime. What would you sacrifice for a second chance at justice? Comment below, because I was about to find out exactly how much a broken architect could still build. Theodore Ashford, the private investigator, had given me 2 clear instructions: keep silent and trust no one. The hospital room, which had been a cage of pain, was now a strategic bunker. Nurse Chloe became my lifeline, a quiet, fierce ally against the world Serafina had built. 3 days after the initial phone call, Theodore visited. He wasn't the man in the crisp suit from the parking lot. He was focused, holding a meticulously organized binder. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Ash, the charges against Serafina and Marcus Sterling are bigger than just fraud against you. They were running a national medical insurance scam through the Wellness Fund. We have enough evidence for the FBI to move, but before we get justice, we need to deal with the family you think is supporting them. He slid a document across the bed table. It wasn't a divorce paper. It was a complex trust deed and a legal ledger. Your father, Robert Hayes, is a constitutional law expert. Yes? He never stopped watching you. Ash, he was harsh, not absent. When he signed off on your mother's insurance money, he didn't just walk away. He immediately hired my firm, using your mother's remaining trust funds to investigate Elijah and Marcus, not Serafina. Yet, he suspected Elijah had been manipulating your mother's funds for years, and he tracked the connection to Marcus Sterling. I stared at the ledger, stunned. My father, the man I believed judged me, had been silently fighting for me. He saw the rot years before I did. The silence wasn't contempt. It was tactical vigilance. Just then, the door opened. It wasn't Serafina. It was my father. Robert Hayes looked older, the lines on his face deeper, but his posture was still the rigid, unwavering stance of a man accustomed to upholding the law. He looked at my broken body, then at Theodore, then back at me. The disappointment I always expected wasn't there. It was replaced by profound, weary regret. Ashton, he said, his voice husky. I should have told you. I should have trusted your passion over my prejudice. I should have recognized that your talent was worth protecting, even from your own loyalty. He sat heavily on the chair, the weight of years of silent conflict settling over him. I was strict with you because I knew you were an artist, and artists are vulnerable to people like Serafina and Marcus. I thought if I pushed you toward structure, you would be safe. I never stopped seeing you as the better man. I just failed to protect you from the wolves wearing sheep's clothing. The tears came then. Not angry ones, but tears of painful understanding. My father's tough love was the only thing that had survived Serafina's scorched earth campaign. He hadn't been fighting against me. He had been fighting for the man he knew I could be. Dad, Elijah came here, demanding the insurance money back. Robert's jaw tightened. I know. Theodore filed an injunction this morning. Elijah is implicated in money laundering through Marcus Sterling's firm. He's about to be served by the FBI. He wasn't asking for money. Ash, he was panicking because the financial house of cards is collapsing. That was the redemption arc for my father. A beautiful, unexpected gift. He didn't just save my money, he saved my belief in family. The confrontation with Serafina happened over the phone later that afternoon. Theodore had advised me to call her, but with a recording device running. Serafina, I began, my voice steady, no longer the weeping shadow. I know. The renal failure, the transplant, it was all a lie. I have the evidence. Marcus Sterling's firm is under federal investigation. Silence on the line. Then, her voice, laced with sheer terror and uncontrolled rage. You pathetic idiot. You were supposed to stay broken. You have nothing. You have no assets, no credibility, and you're lying in a hospital bed. You're right, I said, putting a definitive boundary in place. I have no assets, but I have the truth. And unlike money, Serafina, the truth is something the FBI can't freeze. Our marriage is over. Our contact is through lawyers only. You will not poison Skylar, Aubrey, or Caleb against me again. You will never see my children unsupervised again. I hung up, feeling a wave of catharsis wash over me. I wasn't fighting for reconciliation. I was fighting for severance, for empowerment. I had set a boundary, and I had held it. The immediate recovery began not with physical therapy, but with community support. Nurse Chloe. Hearing I had no one, organized the hospital staff to set up a collection for basic needs. A fellow patient, an elderly man who was a retired contractor, heard about my story and offered me temporary accounting work from my bed. I was relying on the kindness of strangers and the silent, powerful protection of my father. My body was still broken, but my spirit was starting to knit itself back together. I knew the fight was far from over. I had to face the children and rebuild a life that Serafina had meticulously destroyed. But now, I had the truth, and I had my father. As Theodore left, he gave me a confident nod. The hardest part is over, Ash. Now, you need to go out there and build something new, something she can never take away. I knew what I had to do. In the next video, you'll see how I used the truth to reclaim my dignity and my children. The hospital was a temporary battlefield. The courtroom was the final siege. With Theodore's airtight evidence and my father, Robert Hayes, serving as my strategic advisor, not my judge, the case against Serafina and Marcus Sterling was devastating. It wasn't just a divorce hearing anymore. It was a federal indictment. Serafina was arrested by the FBI at a charity gala she thought she was hosting for her real comeback. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus Sterling was taken down in his sterile financial office. The court process was swift and brutal. Serafina received 15 years in federal prison for massive insurance fraud and conspiracy. Marcus got 20 years in disbarment. And Elijah, my golden child brother. Theodore's initial investigation proved he had laundered a portion of the fraudulent funds through his investment schemes. He pleaded guilty to lesser charges but lost his career, his reputation, and was forced to pay heavy restitution. He was finally a real failure, and it was a victory I didn't even enjoy. He was simply irrelevant. The court awarded me full custody of Skylar, Aubrey, and Caleb, and ordered immediate restitution from the frozen offshore accounts. But the money wasn't the victory. The victory was seeing my children look at me with trust again. My physical healing was slow, but the emotional rebuilding was swift. My father, Robert, didn't just help with the legal work, he showed up. He brought the kids to the hospital every day. He stopped judging my work and started seeing my value. One morning, he wheeled me out of the hospital to a stunning sight. Sitting on the curb was my old, beat-up truck, fixed, cleaned, and running smoothly. I had your crew, the old guard. Fix it, Ash, Dad said, a rare, genuine smile on his face. They wouldn't take any money. They said they were waiting for their leader. Then, he handed me a large manila envelope. Inside were my original Hayes landscapes and design sketchbooks and a deed. The assets you sacrificed. The firm's original property. The blueprints. I bought them back using a contingency trust fund. Outside the marriage settlement. They've been waiting for you to come home and reclaim your foundation. I looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. Not the cold professor, but the silent protector. Dad, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, he said, laying a hand on my shoulder. You taught me that real love doesn't break you, it rebuilds you. I just held the blueprints until you were ready to draw again. We didn't move back to the old ranch house. That house was stained by lies. Instead, my children and I, along with my father, found a property with good soil and potential. Caleb, now 17, and I spent the next year building a new company from the ground up, the foundation firm. It was smaller, focused on integrity and purpose. We built everything by hand, literally laying the foundation of our new life together. My final victory wasn't financial. It was standing in the new backyard I designed, a space dedicated to recovery and growth, watching Skylar and Aubrey, now 12, teach Caleb how to plant the native wildflowers I specialized in. I was finally happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in years. The betrayal was no longer the end of my story. It was the prologue to my greatest triumph. I learned the hardest lesson anyone can learn. Your strength isn't measured by what you sacrifice for others, but by what you choose to keep for yourself. I chose to keep my integrity, my talent, and my children. I live by my father's creed now, slightly modified. Love with your whole heart, but verify every single action. Trust, but always keep your eyes open. That lesson, born from the fire of betrayal, is the most valuable asset I now possess. This is why I started this channel. The Truth Architects. I didn't just survive the ultimate betrayal. I used the pain to build a community. If you made it this far, you're not looking for sympathy. You're looking for empowerment. You're looking for the blueprint to rebuild your own life after someone tore it down. I promise you this. By subscribing to the Truth Architects, you will gain the tools to recognize toxic patterns, the strategies to set unbreakable boundaries, and the strength to turn your deepest pain into your greatest purpose. We are not victims here. We are architects of our own comeback. So, if you're ready to stop letting someone else's lie define your future, I need you to take action right now. Hit the like button if you felt that moment of catharsis when Serafina was arrested. Let me know we share that sense of justice. Comment below with "The Foundation" if you are ready to start building a new life and leaving the betrayal behind. And most importantly, subscribe. Don't miss the next video where I reveal the specific 5 red flags that Serafina used to manipulate me. A checklist you can use to protect your own life and assets immediately. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the deepest cuts heal into the strongest scars, and those scars are just the foundation for your masterpiece. I'll see you in the next build.